Welcome to SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversations at Home program. I am Kevin Polowy from Yahoo Entertainment. Happy to be here with you guys all today. Before we are joined by our very special guest today, I want to let you know that SAG-AFTRA Foundation is a nonprofit organization that relies entirely on donations to provide emergency assistance and free educational programs to SAG-AFTRA artists. This conversation is made possible thanks to the generosity of our supporters. Over the past year, the foundation has given nearly $7 million in COVID relief to more than 7,000 performers. If you are a SAG-AFTRA artist and need help, please ask. And if you can help, please give. Information can be found in the description of this video, and your support is deeply, deeply appreciated. Now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce clean actor, producer, co-writer, and composer, Mr. Adrien Brody. Adrien, it is great to see you again.
So, thanks again.
It has been a long time since we last talked, at least in an hour or two. I think. Congrats on Clean. I've told you this once today. I'll tell you again. It is a whopper of a performance. Big congrats to you, sir. The film is great. It's such an engrossing, taut, slow burner that just builds up to a killer of an ending, literally and figuratively, I would say. Just great work all around. Considering we are here talking with SAG-AFTRA, normally I would get right into what we just saw you do on screen, but I think we got to rewind it a little further back on this since you actually co-wrote Clean as well. And I believe this is your first writing credit. So let's start there. I mean, how did this story come about?
Well, it stemmed from many things, but I've had a lot of creative influences in my lifetime that I've yearned to bring together in a cohesive piece. And as actors, we are all looking for the perfect role that suits us. And oftentimes that doesn't come. You are to inhabit the words and imagination of others and to bring truth to that. And there came a point where I was really feeling the need to step outside of that and those limitations. And I didn't have the confidence to write this for a very long time. And I had worked with a young filmmaker who I liked on another film, Paul Salette, who I brought the opportunity to, and I pitched him a general idea of what I wanted this story to be and this man. And Paul had a lot of wonderful insight, and he's a wonderful writer. And I set out for us to write this, and with the intention of me getting this made, and hired Paul to direct the film. And it's been a really long time coming. It's taken us quite a bit of time to finally bring this to an audience. As you know, our industry was deeply affected by the pandemic, and the ability to release an independent film or even to share it with distributors at a film festival. All of that went on hold for many filmmakers and aspiring creatives. And so it's a big victory to be here today. And I'm happy to share that with you and share the process. I've learned a lot.
So this really was a case of you having this archetype, this specific character in mind, this genre in mind for many years now, and just not ever actually getting an offer that sort of remotely resembled this type of role. And you took it in your own hands and you wrote it yourself. You co-wrote it yourself, basically.
It wasn't merely just not getting a great role that fit me. Mm-hmm. It was that this is a genre. Clean falls into a genre that I grew up loving, and this classic story of redemption and revenge and retribution, something that is well earned and that has a degree of excitement and violence and a heroic character that I wanted, and I love those films. But it is also an opportunity that I felt to offer something to an audience, because I know what I'm craving, which is there was a caliber of filmmaking in the 70s and an approach by actors and it was a very thoughtful storytelling approach that I wanted to exist within this, accessible story, and I wanted it to delve a little deeper into the frailty and the flaws of this man, and also the failings of the world around us that add to this sense of pressure and isolation that these characters are living with, and that frustration that I feel, and I feel is a collective frustration, Clean embodies, and so it was a culmination of all of that that I felt was a much bigger thing for me to explore, and a lot to ask for somebody else to drop on the table. So I did the work to get it there.
Let's talk some performance. I mean, in terms of gearing up for this role, take us into your process. I mean, what do you do to get into the mindset of this guy who does clearly have so much trouble on his mind?
Well, I mean, it doesn't take much work to look around and see how much loss and how much most people have to contend with on a daily basis. I think, this preceded COVID, but I think COVID has opened our eyes to, greater burden, has increased the burden, but the burden existed already for many people. And I'm not just talking about, inequality within people's lives, and especially that afflict poorer communities, but I feel that within those communities, there are even more hardships to overcome. And really, this is about a man who's failed terribly, failed as a father, and he's done a lot of destructive acts towards society as a whole. And he's really on that path of redemption and really working to do better. And it's a very fragile state of mind. That's a very hard thing to embody for a long period of time. But there is a sense of power and drive within him, and he finds a degree of hope within that. And so, it just was embracing the bleakness of it all and holding on to that simmering underlayer for when that opportunity was to strike back against that, both physically and metaphorically. And, it's something I relate to. It's just, you have to own it.
Well, I mean, you've always been an actor that's embraced challenge, that's taken these challenges head on and put yourself through meticulous preparation. But I mean, what did this character specifically present you that you had never played with before, that you needed to crack for the first time?
Well, I mean, on a practical level, we started this in the dead of winter in New York, upstate, and it was brutally cold for everyone, for the crew, for all the actors, and for all of us. It was painfully cold. I had already pulled my back before starting this, and I had to train, and there's a kind of physical, a physique that I had in mind for him, a real sinewy, gecko-like wound up physical being. And, that was very challenging under all those circumstances of being in the cold, working, 16, 18 hour days and in physical pain while doing it. And then, having to, live on a really restrictive diet, et cetera, and do all these things and training. So that was one component of it. And then there's just the sheer stress of not just carrying a film, but carrying the responsibility of the entire production. It was my production company, and I had to manage all the minute details of that, and all of that those were all new challenges.
Yeah, where do you guys shoot? Was it Utica?
Yeah, we shot predominantly in Utica. Yeah, it takes place in Utica.
Okay, and is that sort of what? Because I think you wanted to make this sort of a New York story, there's you look at you can't necessarily tell where it is, and I think it almost could stand in for sort of like outer borough Queens or Nassau or something like that, but it is set in Utica as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, Utica's it's a wonderful city. It I feel like it has a great deal of beauty, but it also has this through line that many American cities have, that there's extensive poverty in certain areas. And there is, I feel like when the world sees New York, they think of New York City, and these are cities within New York, and that represent the fabric of American life. And it's very hard. It's very hard to see how difficult it is, especially for young people in impoverished areas, to make it out of those very real obstacles. There are pitfalls at every corner. We have drug and violence problems with violence, problems with you name it, and that becomes very challenging. So that also was important for me to represent that aspect of the world around us.
Clean has a very distinct look, impressive beard, even though I don't think he's really trying to impress anybody. How did you land on his physicality for this?
Initially, I think Paul and I were thinking of a much more clean look for a guy, because I felt like he's a very regimented person. He's in a program, kind of Narcotics Anonymous program, not merely to quell any thirst for addiction of his past drug use. That's another component of what ails this great nation, the prevalence of that. His burning desire within him is this rage and aggression that he's deeply trying to put to ice. And in that sense, I try to create someone who was very regimented, very controlling, and had a very austere, practical way of life, monastic in that sense, in an effort to control the distractions and other urges. And he gives back a lot, not only in a physical sense by being a trash collector, literally cleaning up the refuse, but he's trying to mentor this young girl and make up for some of the mistakes he's made in his own life as a father. And what I wanted was for him to feel very real, and for those broken aspects to kind of exist and be alive. And so I didn't think of so in spite of all that kind of rigorous, regimented life, I wanted him to have this power and sense of, wildness within him. And so I started growing the beard, and when I was young, I used to have a fade, and I thought that gave him that edge, that kind of balanced both for me very much. And it was a very extreme look for him. And it kind of just came about from what felt honest and again, influences in my life and even my own, fashion sense at one point in my life.
I remember the fade. I mean, the fade was like that. That's what you got in the summertime. Like once the temperature hit a certain degree, you got the fade in the 90s.
I'm tight.
There's a doctor at one point refers to the stuff Clean put his body through before he just took a pipe to the head. It's obvious that Clean has seen and done some things, right? I mean, and a lot of it is hinted at. The exposition is hinted at over the course of the story, but we don't know it all. We definitely don't know it all. We don't learn it all. How much did you guys write his backstory? I mean, just for your own, for your own performance motivation, like what's not on the screen?
This is a very unusual one because there's a whole world. I'm not exaggerating when I say for 10 years, this has been swirling around and trying to come out in this cohesive piece. And so, and I have written voluminous notes of things and details, and including mechanical skills and, technical weaponry modifications that he would do in anticipation of this. And so the manual is all in there anyway. All of that stemmed from years of preparing for telling a story like this and trying to convey a sense of truth and originality in that. It just was. It's just there.
There is a thorough, clean Bible that exists, is basically what.
No, it's not all in writing. There are details that are in writing, but I'm just saying it's there within me. It is what I needed was a partner to help me throw that all into something and divide it and break it down into a 3-act structure, and then to also infuse what was meaningful to him as well, and how we could infuse all of that and speak to, the world that we wanted to create and set out to do.
You mentioned the genre influences and the time period influences earlier, specifically the 1970s. And I could be way off base here, but I'll say it anyway. There were points in this film I picked up Taxi Driver, Travis Bickle vibes. I mean, Clean's dour outlook on life as he drives around the city in the opening minutes, via voiceover, sort of the protective role he takes over this girl, though obviously the dynamics are much different. The blue collar setting or in occupation, was that an inspiration for you?
Of course, yes, of course. And I mean, so much of Scorsese's work and De Niro's for that matter. I mean, it's all big inspiration, I would say, to me and most actors of my generation. That sets the bar really high. A film like that represents the loneliness and isolation of a character and the alone time with that individual, the quiet times where we as the audience in our darkened room get to go into their space and see what's lurking there and what they're contending with and what they have to overcome. And this is an homage to that, as well as old Charles Bronson movies that I grew up watching and loving. There's like it was a chance to explore a whole side of filmmaking that I thoroughly loved and merge these aspects together.
The action eventually shifts from Utica up towards the Adirondacks, where I believe you attended summer camp as a kid. But that reminds me of something else I read about you recently. This is I'm just going to cite Wikipedia here. His parents enrolled him in acting class to distance him from the dangerous children with whom he associated. I mean, everyone has their own way into acting, but is this true? I mean,
good luck. Yeah, but, I wouldn't say it was specifically to. I mean, it was to give me an outlet. Is what it was, and to not have me resort to the dangers of idle time with a bunch of really mischievous, at the very least mischievous, but I grew up in Queens, and I grew up with a lot of reality, and I feel like that was a better acting school than acting school. I mean, there were definitely techniques and technical understanding and a degree of nurturing within that to find a space to hone a craft. But that world, I think the fact that I had a sense of purpose and a love of acting and a knowledge of what I wanted to do with my life prevented a serious potential downfall that would have likely occurred had I been a bit more free, I guess, or if I did not know how to align that drive within me into something creative and worthwhile, would have had a similar tendency, and I would have devoted it to other things, just like many of my friends and many people that I'm sure all of us know, and that's the beauty of art. That's the beauty of having something to be passionate about, especially acting, I find, because it gives purpose and meaning to deeply tragic things that may have occurred in our lifetimes or to people that we know and love. And it gives us an opportunity to honor those and have them have value if we can convey a truth and understanding from within us to a stranger and share that bond, then that is really the most beautiful part of the craft of acting. So they did the right thing for sure, for many reasons. But I think I don't think, believe me, they had lots to be concerned about over the years, but it was great that they put me in. Actually, to be honest, my mother was a New York photographer. Her name is Sylvia Plath. She's a wonderful photographer and amazing artist in her own right. She had an assignment to photograph the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. And so it wasn't just a thought that I should be an actor or could be an actor. That wasn't ever the plan. She just saw young people doing things in a way that was very reminiscent of my interpretation of what I would bring home, of what I had seen or what I had taught, the way I reenacted certain things. And so it was her intuition that gave me any chance at doing what I love and being here today. And and her assignment in the first place, so that it's kind of a miracle. So.
I want to there's a great supporting cast in Clean too. So I want to give a shout out to the ensemble: Glenn Fleshler, Richie Merritt, Chandler DuPont, Mike Kelty Williamson. There's one co-star in particular I do want to ask you about, especially as a huge hip hop head myself, RZA, aka Bobby Digital of Wu-Tang. He plays your pawn shop buddy. I remember back in the day, you were, when we had a conversation about you were studying hip hop production. I think you were just sort of moving into it, and I think he might have been like mentoring you or tutoring you. Is that accurate?
It's not accurate, but it's funny. That has kind of been like one major pull quote, obviously, every time that there's any reference to my love and lifelong connection to hip hop music. And but RZA has always been super supportive, and someone that I am in awe of, and not just in a musical sense, and what he's created with Wu-Tang and the whole creation of that, and navigating that for all those years, and all the inspiration he's provided all sorts of young people, but how he's transitioned into a fine actor, and he's wonderful in this film, and he was very generous to be a part of this and supportive, and as a filmmaker, and he's has great diversity in his talent, and he's a wonderful human being. He's very intelligent, and I turn to RZA for a lot, and he's been there for me. But I wasn't studying hip hop production. I was making music on my own and with my boys since I was 19. So I was in Cannes, I think, when that first interview was written, and RZA was down the hallway for some project that he was working on. Possibly could have even been Ghost Dog, whatever. But he was there on my floor, and we kicked it. And and so I had brought him up in an interview, and I think one thing leads to another. You know how things go; they become something. Just like it just things end up getting distilled into a little overly simplified thing. But he's there in a spiritual sense. He has been mentoring me. I would say that's factual.
Of course, brings us to your own musical contributions to the film. The first time co-writing, which we talked about, but I believe first time composing it, a feature film, a narrative film. Was this by necessity because it was an indie film, or have you been eager to sort of flex your composing chops now?
I've been eager to make music. I need to be creatively involved. I think, as actors, we have a lot of time. Either we're working or we're doing other things, but we're not acting. It's very hard to be a working actor. And so for many years, I was kicking around in LA, and that served waiting for a break, waiting for an audition. And that served a real purpose for me in kind of making sure that I was doing something creative that I was passionate about, and not sitting around idly or, getting into trouble. And I made a lot of music over those years, and a lot of it's completely lost. I have many devices that were incredible that are stored, and discs, floppy disks, and music, and all over the place. But that voice that emanates from within me, that is the voice that yearned to tell this story about clean and the world that we live in. All those influences that inspired that voice are the same ones that made me who I am today and inspired the music that emanates from within me. And I didn't set out to score this movie. I was making music as we were filming, almost as a meditation. And my beats are already kind of haunted and dark and aggressive and melancholy. And then this exacerbated that. And I said, wow, this is so in line with the character that I'm playing and his world. And I went further with that, and I created a theme for him. And then I created all these other elements, and I ultimately felt like it is a character in and of itself. It is a whole other form of creative expression that I hadn't found a way to put out in a meaningful way, and it worked. And so I just built upon that, and it's very exciting. It's a real blessing to that's 30 years in the making. Is just, it's kind of insane to even say out loud. And you don't know where all that time has gone, but now it's gone into something. And I appreciate having had that.
Inspiring, because we all have, I'm sure every actor watching this has those passion projects that have sat there, and they know it's special, or that talent.
And for that matter, thank you. And for that matter, just musicians who are very talented and that I've encountered, and many friends of mine who've inspired me and taught me things. I used to be so in awe of the fact that they didn't have music out, for whatever reason. And I see how it, and when I started making music, I was like, oh, this is going to be amazing. You can just do this. You can actually do it on your own, and you can put it out. Not quite as easily as it is today, where you can literally put something out with a push of a button. But it's so hard. It's so hard. And as soon as something takes hold of you emotionally, that it's so personal, it becomes very hard to make something of that. And you're still reliant upon the whole industry and machine to help it work. So it's a different time now for young people. I think it's really an exciting time. There's a lot of people that their creative aspirations can be much more accessible to others.
I mean, that's a great segue to the last thing I wanted to ask you about. And you've had so many highlights over the course of your acting career. I'll make my shameless plug now that you will soon be able to watch Adrien on our Roll Recall series on Yahoo Entertainment, where he talks through many of his beloved roles. But man, it feels like you're kind of on fire right now. French Dispatch, Succession, now Clean. You've got Blonde on the way. You've got Adam McKay's Lakers series. Have you felt waves throughout your career? Is that something you sort of had to manage, the highs and lows of this business? Is that something that you've learned to sort of manage over the years? And do you get high and low on yourself, and go through those like so many of us?
Of course. I think I have been doing this a lifetime, and I've had a lot of wonderful opportunities. And within that, when you achieve certain heights in any profession, it's an unrealistic expectation from yourself and from others for that to exist at a red line. Nothing does. And there may be a handful of professionals within our great union and the enormous swath of talented thespians that have had that opportunity, but I would say maybe you can count them on one hand. And they too have had, an ebb and a flow in their career. So I've always expected and understood that. But whether you're conscious of that or not, when you're going through the lower valleys, it's frustrating. And it makes the moments, as you described, like now, where I for one reason or another, there's a flow. There's a flow of both my creative availability and presence of mind, and where my understanding is at this point in my life, and how I'm willing to contribute that to my work, even more purely maybe than the past 20 years. And the love and appreciation that is coming from creative individuals like Wes, or like Adam McKay, and like Andrew Dominic, who people I greatly admire and who lift me up and give me an opportunity to shine. And without that, you can have all the drive or ability or love for the craft, but you aren't given that. And the reality is most of us are not really afforded that. And if we are, there are moments, and you have to take those moments and give what you can to them and ride out the other periods of that run. And that is the life of an artist. That is the life. And as contrary to the perception of what life is like, whether you're a struggling actor or a movie star. You are inevitably on this quest to be fulfilled and to do fulfilling work and share that with people and have that work received. And so I feel really very blessed that this moment is alive right now, and that I'm alive to be able to share that because I do know on both sides of the coin.
Amazing. Well, Adrien, we're out of time, but on behalf of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, I just want to thank you for sharing your experiences, your process, your craft with your fellow performers today. Thank you guys all at home for watching. This was a joy.
Thank you very much, and break a leg.